Hi everyone, today we're talking about the hot topic of ESG and sustainable investing. Welcome to YCG, where we help your capital grow. If that's something that interests you, then hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss a thing. I'm Will Kruger, CEO here at YCG, and I'm joined by Brian Yacktman, President and Chief Investment Officer, and Elliott Savage, Partner and Portfolio Manager here at YCG. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Hey.
So we're talking about socially responsible investing and ESG. You're going to want to keep watching because we're going to talk about some specific industries that we believe are worth taking a deeper dive and a look into. So let's dive into the first question. What is socially responsible investing or ESG investing, Brian?
Well, it varies for a lot of people depending on how they're looking at it from their own value systems. But just at the most basic level, definitionally, ESG stands for environmental social governance, and SRI stands for socially responsible investing.
So Barron's wrote an article about managers that rank high on sustainability and how they are outperforming the market. And in this article, they actually highlighted us, YCG, and frankly, our investment strategy ranks very high from a sustainability standpoint. Why is that? And is YCG an ESG strategy?
Well, so YCG, we want to invest in, we believe that one of the keys to successful investing is going to be investing in a business that has sustainable high rates of return over a very long period of time. So whereas many people are just speculating, trying to make money in the next few days or weeks, we're seeking out investments that we believe can sustainably provide high rates of return for a long period of time. And in order for that to happen, it needs to be an industry in businesses that are a win-win for everyone that's involved. If the stakeholders are involved in a win-lose relationship in the industry, well then basically the companies that are the other competitors and other stakeholders, they're going to be highly motivated to invent alternative solutions that eventually lead to disrupting the industry and disrupting those high sustainable returns that we're after. So I guess what I would say is, interestingly, because we are after these high sustainable returns, our portfolio tends to rank very high on ESG rankings as a byproduct of our process, not necessarily as a result of any targeted filters.
Yeah, and then I would just add that the area that we most often find these high and sustainable returns is in businesses that own dominant networks in industries that grow at least as fast as GDP, and the reason for that is that we think the single most important characteristic to generating those high returns is pricing power. And so you might be saying, well, okay, that's great. But is really raising prices on your customers good for those customers? And we would say it goes back to those networks. And the way that network economics work, the value of the network goes up exponentially relative to the size of the network. So it's one of the few kind of dynamics in a business where even though you're raising the prices over time, the value is growing so much faster that it really still is a huge win-win for both the customers and the investors and many other stakeholders. And that's why we like these businesses so much.
So when you take a look at our holdings, we have no exposure to the energy sector. Why is that?
Well, in terms of our low carbon exposure, I think that you do see, here's an industry where there are some win-lose stakeholders. And I mean, as a populace, I think there's sort of a negative stigmatism on many of these types of industries that are producing carbon, right? And so it's motivated individuals and companies to come up with solutions by pouring all this capital into alternative ways to provide energy. And so over time, it's an industry that's been in decline. And so we expect that the prices and eventually the volumes in carbon-based industries are going to probably decrease over time, which makes us uninterested in them. because again, we're looking for these businesses that can have high sustainable returns.
And I would just add that, you might say then, well, what about investing in some of these new alternative energies? Because that's clearly a growth industry at the moment. And I would say that there are kind of two problems with that. Number one, going back to the fact that we want these dominant networks in industries growing at least as fast as GDP. We haven't really been able to find any businesses that have those clear dominant network economics in that industry. So there are lots of exciting companies, but none that we feel comfortable have high and sustainable returns. And then secondly, not just carbon-based energy, but all energy over a very long time period has gone down as a percentage of our budget. And that's because of innovation and our ability to basically make things faster, cheaper, and better. And so we expect that even solar and alternative energy sources like that will just continue to have rapid declines in prices, similar to the price of computers and all these other technologies that have benefited our lives so much.
Which goes to show that, again, oftentimes in industries, if there's a lot of new technology going on, that it could be just that the users of those technologies are the ones that benefit, not necessarily the investors. Right. I think that's a key thing to understand. It's not necessarily just revenue growth that leads to great investment outcomes. It's the ability to earn high returns on the capital employed. And that's oftentimes not the case in these types of industries.
Great points.
Yep.
Great points. So long-term investing is the hallmark of our strategy. What industries do you like, and from an investment standpoint?
Yeah, so I would say that, we have those two components to our strategy. We want the dominant networks, and we want them in industries growing at least as fast as GDP. And I think that, in some sense, the proof is in the pudding that if an industry is growing at least as fast as GDP, then it's likely that, and if it has been for a long time, and if people expect it to grow faster than GDP for a long time to come, that's probably because it's increasing in value to all stakeholders over time for society. And so, I would say that some of the industries like that are advertising, real estate, software. Those are travel. So those are a couple of the big ones I'd mention.
So what about healthcare? That's growing as fast as GDP. What about healthcare as a sector?
Well, the thing about healthcare, you're right, it is growing faster as a percentage of GDP over time. So you might think, oh, this must be one that fits the mold. The question is the software, excuse me, I didn't mean to say software, is the healthcare providing, is that value coming more from a cartel type situation where there's rent-seeking behavior? You have this industry with insurance and government involved that's causing prices to artificially inflate. And so it's hard to tell then. There is true value creation that's going on there as well, but which one's is winning more? And you have a populace on both sides of the aisle that want to break up this rent-seeking behavior. So the question is, when that rent-seeking behavior is broken up, what becomes of the profitability of the industry? Where's that true value creation, and are those returns sustainable? And we question that, and so it's an industry we tend to be avoiding or careful to when we're looking at it.
Yeah, and I would just add that, sort of the hallmark of those other industries that we mentioned that we are invested in is that generally they have few regulations, and it's mostly like a market-based transaction between two willing parties. And so if you have and both parties generally have the same amount of information when they're making the purchases. And so in those conditions, it's highly likely that most of what's happening is value creation for both sides. And then if you can't identify any obvious negative externalities to society, then it's probably businesses that are going to, continue to grow and expand. And I would just contrast that with healthcare, where it's got, huge regulation, a Byzantine structure of regulation that is just rife with opportunities to rent seek. And then secondly, there's a huge information differential between the healthcare providers and the patients who a lot of times don't understand, whether they need treatment, how much the treatment should cost, all of those sorts of things.
Right.
And so it's just a much more opaque transaction that lends itself much more to rent seeking.
With a third-party payer system and insurance and government all involved, it complicates it.
Well, great points, guys. Thank you so much. If a big component is achieving high rates of return, then those returns need to be sustainable. And YCG's performance actually scores really well from an ESG standpoint. And we believe it's because of the core philosophy around network effects and enduring pricing power. And it's nice to see that ESG sustainability is a natural byproduct of our strategy. Well, thanks for joining us today. Leave your comments below. We'd love to hear from you, and check out our other videos. We'll see you in the next one.